Welcome, Pinewood community. This is Mr. Lemon, your principal, here with another WISCR Wednesday interview. We are so privileged to be able to have with us today not only a really successful person, but also a Pinewood alum. Let us welcome with us today, Jon M Chu.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
and one of the things, as if you a person that has seen the other episodes, usually I take the questions and Mr. Bates there runs the technical part. Because Mr. Bates knows Jon, we're going to try to switch roles and we'll see. So if there are technical difficulties, you'll know that it's me, that I screwed it up and I made.
This is dangerous, by the way.
Exactly. Here,
Mr. Bates asking questions, but
so I do have a couple of questions of my own that I have, and then we'll bring in students, and then we'll just remind people, if you have a question that you want to ask, put it in the question field here, and make sure you tell us whether or not you want to say it live. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Bates. Let's get started.
All right. Welcome, Jon. Thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. This is a real indication of how old Mr. Bates really is. Because I was in high school when he arrived. And him and Mrs. Bates were my teachers, and they were both single. So that happened under my era.
I could see that you were the wheels were turning. You're trying not to say Mrs. Payne.
Yeah. That's how I knew her, Miss Payne.
That's right.
When I was in junior high, and she helped us get through all the awkward years. And all we tried to do was set her up with every teacher. And just so happens, Bill Bates had the stuff. So
this is awesome. I didn't know this is the way this interview was going to start out.
Oh well, yeah, they like chaperoned our field trip, and everyone was like, "Oh, they really talked a lot." Nothing against any sort of school rules, don't worry, but you could feel the sparks.
Awesome.
You could feel the sparks.
I feel
was like the cool teacher and the computer nerd teacher like falling in love. It was really.
Wait, which was
you didn't know which one was the cool teacher, right?
I like that one. That was good.
I feel comfortable disclosing this now, but unbeknownst to you guys, we were dating at the time.
Oh. See, I was in the dark this whole time. My mind just blew up.
But it was, thank you for setting us up, though.
It's like jumping up and down.
So speaking of those awkward years, let me.
I have a lot of questions for you now. We can switch this. It can all be about. Oh, there it is.
There it is. There's some of our Pinewood
Tivas.
here.
Most of these kids don't know what Tivas are, but they were hot back then, and with socks even more so.
You know, that was sweet Pinewood football gear back then.
It was.
We didn't have football.
Pinewood football was so it was flag football, and it was so intense that you could wear slippers to practice.
Well, here's another good one. And
oh yes,
actually, Mrs. Bates had this picture on her desk in her classroom for years until we left Pinewood the first time. And, I want to point out to the folks, this was not the 1993 prom, but the junior high got all the hand-me-downs from the upper campus, the high school activities closet. So this was one of their dances.
Let's be real. Miss Payne at the time, encouraged us to have our own prom because we wanted to be like the seniors. So we threw our own prom. And I don't know how we got all the prom stuff, but yeah, I guess it was left over. We were told we actually, purchased them, but I guess not. So,
oh, maybe you did.
You.
I wasn't.
They really manipulate your mind in Pinewood, apparently.
Oh, this was a prom.
And this was in the theater, the old theater. I don't know what the theater looks like now, but I don't think it looked like a barn the way this does. It was great.
It hasn't changed that much, actually.
So
No.
it's still Mr. Barr.
No, Mr. Ivers are one of our theater extraordinaires. He loves the setup of the theater, as you can imagine.
Nice.
And
We were excited. Mr. Bates would get excited in the computer room to get a CD-ROM drive. That's how long ago it was. I remember we all crowded in there.
That was that's right. Jon is also a technology person. He likes his gadgets along with me. So sometimes we'll compare our new gadgets.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
So here we have, I don't know if everybody knew this, Jon. For a long time, you were the Pinewood School mascot. You were the Panther.
This is not public, right? This is not being streamed publicly. There's only like 20 high school seniors watching this, right?
That's right. And here's the group that we took to.
But look at that Pinewood suit. That outfit. First of all, Miss Payne at the time, Mrs. Bates now, was also like the head coach for the cheerleaders, and I was at that point the sports commissioner. I don't know if they have that at Pinewood anymore. So we were in charge of the sports events. And so we wanted to put on a good show, and part of that was let's make sure the cheerleaders are on point, and we need a mascot. And nobody wanted to be the mascot, so the sports commissioner had to do what he had to do in order to make an event. That's what as a leader, you take the bulls by the horn. And we bought a new outfit. That is the brand new outfit back then, and I learned how to mime at cheer camp.
That's right. I don't know if you remember, we took you guys up to the 49ers, to Old Candlestick, and there was a large contingent of cheer teams for this.
Yes.
I think it was the 75th anniversary. Yeah, right there on the shirts of the NFL. And we got to be out on the field, and they did some training with, at the time, it was the San Jose Sharks, Sharky, the mascot.
Yes. I mean, I feel like I could have gone pro at that point, but I had other aspirations. So
that's right.
But I'm telling you, actually, putting on, and on my 40th birthday, I went back to Los Altos to throw my 40th birthday party just last November, and someone got the outfit, the current Pinewood mascot outfit, to the party, and I put it back on, and I'm not gonna lie, it feels empowering when you put on those gloves and you have those giant feet. The Pinewood spirit came back through me.
So this is a quick shout out. Knowing that this was your trajectory, come fall, there's going to be a line now for people who want to do the mascot. So we'll be doing auditions here in the fall, knowing that
it's true. One of the things I'm sure we'll bring up today is like value. Whatever you're doing, bring value to that job, and be someone that they need. And being the Panther made sure that I was needed. And by the way, when you're the only boy at cheer camp for 2 summers in a row, it's not too shabby.
That's true. That's not bad. So before we move into your the next stage of your journey, now that you're,
how many people did Rain have on the attendees? Tell me the truth.
I think it was like 250, 260.
Oh, come on, guys. We're 180. We need 50 more people. Can I invite the internet? You tell me if I can. You tell me if I can. Right.
Now that we've got Pinewood folks on there, you can invite whoever you like.
Okay.
So at what point? I mean, I know. So Jon M Chu, and I remember the story that Mrs. Bates told, where you would write that on your tests, right, and quizzes and things. And
yes.
She asked you one day, what's up with the M? And I don't know if you remember the story, but she said that you told her, one day I'm going to be famous, and this is how I'm going to sign my name.
I don't remember saying those words,
Oh,
But
I think she just corrected me and said, she said, one day I'm going to be a director. And this is how I'm going to sign up.
okay, that makes sense. That would make more sense. I would hope fame was not a motivation because I will have failed. Um, but no, actually, I remember. So the M stands for Murray, if you can believe it. I'm 1/32 Scottish back in the day. I don't ask a lot of questions, but 1/32 Scottish, and so you know, one of the people, one I guess our great grandfather had a name with Murray in it, so it's sort of kept in our family. And so I got that, and I never used it in my name. I was always Jonathan Chu. And then when I was started to make little films in like 5th or 6th grade, I started watching movies, and I watched Yankee Doodle Dandy and a musical called George M, about George M. Cohen, who wrote all these like patriotic sort of songs. And I loved the movie so much, and I loved that musical. And he would sign his name George M. Like, that's how you know, George M. Not George M. Cohen, but just George M. And I was like, I have a middle name M, so I'm going to sign everything Jon M. Jon M. Jon M. So that was how it started. Before that, I would sign my name. I was so obsessed with dinosaurs, and my name was Jonathan, so I would sign it Dinothan. So I like to change my name, apparently. And when you sign up, when you get to do your first director's job and you get into the director's guild, you actually have to have an official name. So you have to and stick with that name so no one else can touch it. And so I had to make a choice after my first movie, Step Up to the Streets, of what name I was going to go with. And it was either Jon Chu, Jon M Chu, Jonathan Chu, just Chu. I was thinking about just doing Chu, like Madonna, but I ended up wanting to just keep with Jon M Chu because I felt like I wanted to look at, you know, the videos I did in 4th grade, and then look at a movie that comes out in the theater and like say like that's the same person. So anyway, that's my long answer. Sorry.
No, that's really cool. So
that's why we don't have 250 people on this thing yet.
Actually, I just got a notice that some people said that they were
Bored.
having a hard time getting into the meeting. So, you know, if those of you that are out there listening, if you know someone having trouble, just click on the link and it'll get you right in. There's no, you know, you don't need a password if you just click that link.
Okay.
So, you know, were there things at Pinewood, you know, in your high school career that inspired you to be, you know, you said early on you wanted to be a director, and I know that I have memories of you walking around campus holding a camera. I think there was one year you did like a whole year's worth of trying to do like the year in review video.
Yes.
And class videos was, we still have them now. They're not as big as they used to be because it's not a novelty anymore, but they were a big thing back in your, you know, class.
Yeah, I think back then it was like making videos, editing videos was such, you had to have certain equipment. Not everybody had that equipment. You had to know how to do it. There wasn't YouTube to go figure things out. You kind of had to just go to the library or have a friend that understood that. And so I started editing stuff probably in like 5th or 6th grade. And I think as a shy kid, I realized, and I didn't know how to necessarily relate to everybody. I was a weird kid. I wasn't a shy kid. I was just a weird kid. But the camera allowed me to talk to anybody because everybody wanted me to be my friend when I had a camera. I mean, even to this day, my wife gets annoyed at me when we are at a event because I will be the person who ends up taking all the pictures, not being in any of the pictures. But I think it's fun. I love capturing moments for people that they'll always have forever and will remember that event through an image that I took. I love interpreting that stuff. But personally, and I've unpacked this probably only in the last couple of years, that the camera really allowed me to not feel awkward in front of people. So I could just talk to them. And they were open to me and they liked me. It gave me a thing. And so when we were in high school, the ability to actually cut together, it also involved technology. At that time, computers were a novelty. I didn't even learn how to type until like my 8th grade or freshman year. And so I think it was like a combination of like, oh, this is cool technology. And it was just just emerging. Digital video was just emerging. We didn't even have it at first. And people would come into my parents' restaurant, and from Adobe, from Apple, from at the time Sun Microsystems, and give my dad, because they knew I was a kid making little films, like digital video cards, monitors, software. Adobe gave me all the software stuff, so I got them all for free as a kid, and learned it without manuals. And so it just sort of just kept building from there.
And I got a quick note from Mr. Gibson that says, he says, "Hey, Creatures was one of your first videos."
He remembers the name of one of my videos. Yes, I and we had these, the class video competitions that were a really big deal, and I had just started getting into it. And I remember watching my older brother and my older sister, because they all went to Pinewood, seeing how cool those people were when they made it. It was like cool to make a video. It wasn't nerdy. And so I loved being able to like shock people with our video and like go hard at it. And most of the time I was just, trying to convince my my schoolmates to just act in any sort of way, because no one wanted to be there. So it actually really honed my skills of how to get a performance out of someone who really doesn't want to be there. So when you work with big stars who are getting paid a lot of money, it's really great training, because most of the time they don't really want to be there. They're just getting paid for it. So, but it was great. I could not have asked for a better environment at Pinewood, because I think if I was in a bigger school with other kids who knew how to do video and knew how to do it, I would have been too intimidating. I would be like, I don't know, I'm not one of those people, so I can't do that. Because I was like one of the only people, and everyone was so kind at Pinewood that they would sort of entertain this idea that I could be the video guy. I think that even though I wasn't the greatest, I think it gave me a lot of confidence to believe I was, and allowed me to keep going further and further. I had no blockage, because I was the only, me and a couple others, my friends, who were the people who did that. So it was great. And then I got to, when we sold, our little video yearbooks off the market from Pinewood, it allowed us to buy other video equipment. And I could just keep putting money into making more equipment. Nowadays, obviously, I would have saved a lot of money, because you can edit on your phone and distribute on YouTube. But at the time, like, that was very privileged stuff, which I think is a big reason why in films and TV, there's been such a lack of representation. Obviously, there's many reasons, but one of the reasons I do think is access of equipment and crew. That all takes money, effort. It's a privilege to have time to be creative. It's a privilege to learn how to edit and have the equipment to edit. So I was very lucky to have that when not a lot of people had that, and it definitely gave me years ahead of people. Even when I arrived I went to USC Film School, so it gave me years ahead of that. So.
Mm-hmm. Now you mentioned family, and I know that family is a big influence in your life.
Yes.
And like your dad, I know, just does not shy away from the spotlight. What influences
He'll take the microphone.
And the microphone, that's right. So how big of an influence was your family on your career?
Huge. I mean, even to this day, whether I want to or not, they're gonna influence my life. Growing up I was the youngest of 5. Everyone had gone to Pinewood, essentially, and so by the time I came in, there was a lot of expectations. My oldest brother, Larry, who is at the restaurant now, you can see him on I don't know if it's the left or right in everybody's screen, but on the left for me, and he's on all the banners in the gym, like MVP for soccer and tennis, and Lynn Rich's award for all his sports. He was student body president. So he's all the teachers would call me his name, not my name. So immediately going into a school like that, you feel a sense of protection, because no one's going to mess with you, because you sort of have all the teachers know you already. They know your parents already. They know your brothers and sisters. Your brother plays on the basketball team. Your sister plays on the basketball team. So I was very lucky to have this sort of shield. And then watching my dad, who my mom and my dad came from, my mom's from Taiwan, my dad's from China. They came to the Bay Area when they were 19, 20 years old. They met in San Mateo and didn't speak a word of English, and started this restaurant at the corner of San Antonio and El Camino in Los Altos. In this little, it was a mini mart. And so they had one little stall that they rented and served people. And then eventually got the salon next door, the smoke shop next to that, the fish market next to that. And then eventually took over the whole place. So if you look at the place, it looks like a mini mall, but it's all one now. So, and this is my daughter, Willow, because she loves to come into my Zooms. Say hi, Willow.
Hi, Willow.
And Willow has this really fun thing for anyone who has kids, where when she is nervous, she decides to act like a baby and talk like a baby, even though she's not a baby. Okay. So anyway,
I do that too.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
It's a good mechanism, actually. Thank you. So growing up in a place where you're taught America is the greatest place in the world, and as long as you work hard and love what you do, you can literally do anything. And that, we grew up very patriotic, very knew that you had to work hard no matter what. You had to work harder than everybody else. Okay. Go that way. We also potty trained her, so she's actually doing really well. Long story short, that kind of environment, and seeing my dad in the kitchen and in the front, be able to hang in the back with the chefs, and then also get on to and actually cook stuff if he needed to, be better than any chef back there, and also be able to go up front and welcome people and be gracious and graceful, and people at restaurants, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but people are very mean at restaurants. They feel very like you're their server, and so as a kid, watching your dad being treated that way is tough. But my dad takes it in stride, is double the kindness back, and he always says, that's our job, is we represent Chinese families in this neighborhood. They don't know, at that point, they started in 1969. So at that point, there weren't a lot of Chinese families. We are ambassadors to what a lot of these people know as a Chinese family. So we have to just show love the whole time, so that when they run into other Chinese families in the future, they have a positive experience and can build on that. And so that was something for us that was always drilled into our heads. My mom made sure that we had good etiquette and could speech and debate was very important to our upbringing. And so all those things really came into play as I became more of a leader in the jobs that I had. So because I had great leadership from my family.
Wow. Okay. Oh, that's great. And your family, it's not because we're broadcasting, and I would say this to you in private. I mean, some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. Absolutely.
There's something.
Yeah. There's something.
I'll never forget. And I was in kindergarten, and I remember they would give me dumplings every day, and then I'd bring it to school, and other kids would be like, "What's that smell?" So I would dump the dumpling before I didn't want to be weird, so I just dumped the food before I got to school without telling my mom. And then they were like, "Oh, Chinese New Year, guess what, John? We volunteered to do a presentation about Chinese New Year." And I was like, "Oh gosh, this is the worst thing." Maybe I was in first grade. And then they came in and did this presentation, and they brought in the lion dancing outfits, and they brought in their chefs who were in the back, and they had a drummer, and my dad's in the thing, my mom's and then they handed out chocolates in little gold chocolates in red envelopes, and they told the story of sort of Chinese New Year and why we did this. And they the kids, everyone thought it was so cool. I became the coolest kid in school. And it just reminded me like how much exposure can just change minds. Like it's just about, you know, sometimes fear is way worse than actually just seeing the truth and sharing what you have in your family. And it's not weird anymore. It's become, you know, now pork buns are like $15 at the hipster store down the street. It's no longer weird. So, you know, value is, I think that's why stories are important, because it can shift our values. So.
Well, I want to, there's a few more pictures I want to share, but I also want to make sure we get time for questions. So I don't want, you know, there's some good questions that are out there, but, you know, there's some pictures of you doing your thing right here. And here you are in Step Up to the Streets, correct?
This is actually Step Up 3D, but, you know, one of the
Step
my
Up.
second movie. And there's Moose right there. Yes.
Okay.
When I was skinnier.
You know, I found some interesting pictures of you out there. What's the bottom one? What's going on down there?
The bottom. So she is singing in Crazy Rich Asians. She sang the opening song Money. And so she was a student at USC that we found to sing the Chinese version of Money. That's What I Want. And so she's recording it there. And I'm pretending to be singing.
You sure you weren't in there? And there you, I know.
Definitely am not in there.
I know when you did G.I. Joe, you know, the G.I. Joe action figures and, you know, that was big. You had those when you were little, right?
Yeah, I had a lot of them. I was, you know, the youngest of 5. You get everybody's toys, plus you get the toys that you get. So I was very spoiled, and I had a lot of adventures. I'm convinced I learned my storytelling abilities through my, you know, week-long adventures in my backyard with my toys. And Roadblock, who Rock plays in G.I. Joe Retaliation, it was one of my favorites. It was really cool to hang with The Rock for almost a year.
That's cool. And here's the gang from. Are you doing the third one on this one?
I'm like, I think I was attached, but I haven't thought about that in maybe 3 years. So we were working on a script, and then and it just wasn't great yet. So I sort of like moved on with my life. So we'll see what happens. But this group is great. This is the best. This is the most amazing group of actors you can work. I mean, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, like Mark Ruffalo, Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson. Like, you could not ask for a better group, and they were so fun and so hilarious. And it was a big movie with magic, so we had magicians on the set all the time. And yes, so it was a good time.
Is that just part of life in your business, right? You're attached to something that you can be really excited about, and things change. And
yeah. I mean, you get used to that. Like, projects need to earn their existence because they're expensive, and they're not. They're almost miracles that any movie gets made. A lot of things have to come together, and so you know, when I first got into the business, I would tell my parents every meeting I went to, every timeline that I thought was going to happen. And for 5 years, none of it happened. So at a certain point, to protect your own sanity, you just stop and you just say, I'm gonna work my hardest and pitch these things, and when it becomes real, then I'll tell people. And so that's sort of what I learned through that experience. You know, at first, when you get an opportunity, you want to tell everyone. You just learn to, like, it's part of the business. It's a flow. You're gonna be up, you're gonna be down. You know, you're gonna have a great, successful movie, and then you're not, and people are gonna think you're the worst storyteller. I'm sure that will happen in the future for me as well. And then you gotta, like, keep going and prove them wrong and keep making stuff. So. Now,
Steven Spielberg was a big inspiration to you, if I remember correctly. You loved.
Yeah, he actually
talking about Jurassic
Park. Growing up with his movies, of course. E.T., one of my favorites, if not the favorite, and Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, all those movies. And then he's also the one who saw my short film when I was at USC and got me into the business. It was a musical, about mothers. And I don't know how he saw it, because again, the internet was around, but YouTube wasn't around yet. And so he somehow got it and saw it and called me up one day and bought a project from me and became sort of a mentor during that time. And so I'm really grateful for him. And when Spielberg does that, the whole town knows. And I was a 22-year-old nobody from USC that suddenly got all the big meetings at all the studios. And so it sort of set my course early.
Was that Silent Beats?
No, it was When the Kids Are Away. But Silent Beats was a part of that package, but it was When the Kids Are Away, which you can't see online. You can see Silent Beats online, but When the Kids Are Away is nowhere to be found yet.
Yet he found it. He just has that way.
On VHS. I think he saw it on VHS. I'm going to close this door real quick. And I might lock it. Just kidding. I'm not going to.
All right, I want to get to questions.
I did lock it, but
I want to get to questions in just a minute, so I don't want to leave everybody hanging. There was a couple of shots that you guys sent me that I just thought they're really cool looking. You doing your thing.
Yes, that's our editor with me looking at the monitors.
Yeah,
Step of 3D. These are 3D cameras. You can see a camera on top and the camera facing her, because they shoot two sides, one for your left eye, one for your right eye. So you get projected. They go into each eye.
That's really cool. Here you are with Awkwafina, Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes, it was really hot in this. That's why everybody has fans. We were tented this building in, so the heat stayed in, and very humid temperatures. And that's me with my iPad streaming whatever video feed we have there.
Okay,
and the tiger in the corner is not a real tiger. We had to fabricate that in like Thailand, but then to get it back into Singapore was a whole mess, because people couldn't, because the people at the border kept thinking it was real. So we had to get.
You think I would know how to use technology, but I was swiping the wrong way. As the everybody watching was like, "What in the world is going on?"
But that was not me.
There's the tiger. There's the tiger.
Yeah, there's the tiger.
All right, and of course, Crazy Rich Asians was just phenomenal. It reinvented, it seems, the romantic comedy. Yeah, Mrs. Bates says thank you for that. We've been missing those. How do you look at the impact that you've had with this movie and this cast?
It's hard to process exactly, and as a matter of survival, maybe like 3 years prior to this picture, I had sort of I made a movie that no one went to see, and I was still proud of, but nobody went to see it, and bombed. And so you sort of reassess like why you do what you do and what you are trying to accomplish by doing what you're creating. And I had basically at that point decided I need to make projects that only I can bring to the screen, or that couldn't be created without me. And also I'm not going to read reviews, and I'm not going to base my happiness on a project off of box office or impact. I'm just going to make the thing. And if it works, great. If it doesn't matter. I'm like going to just keep telling stories. So I had programmed into my mind, that's how I'm going to make movies from now on. So in the release of Crazy Rich Asians, I had blocked emotionally how I was going to feel about if it does well or not well, and just keep moving, which was actually really great, but also hard when you have moments like this and you're having fun and you're just, you have that sort of edit button in your brain to not get too swept up in it. But I did, ultimately it's fun when a movie has an impact like that. And when you get to see all your actors, people like Henry Golding, who had never been in a movie before, who played Nick Young, the lead, become a movie star and GQ Man of the Year, and is now going to be Snake Eyes in the next G.I. Joe movie. You see Awkwafina, host SNL, who, when I showed her footage on Crazy Rich Asians, she was like, this is the first time, she started crying. And she's like, we were on the rooftop of our hotel, and she's like, this is the first time I see myself in a movie. When you have people like Michelle Yeoh, who I've respected for so long, to be able to work with has been so great. Constance, of course, Gemma, see all these people become movie stars on their own, and change the game themselves. That's the impact that I I'm open and so excited for. And I know with In the Heights, which is all Latin X cast, they're going to do a very similar thing and create a whole new lane for movies and movie stars.
And we just at my house we just finished watching the first season of
Nice.
Home Before Dark, and I know you were attached to that. You directed the first couple episodes. You executive produced, and I think I think the cast is wonderful. But Brooklyn Prince, who plays Hildy Lisco, I thought was just amazing.
She's amazing. She was in that movie Florida Project a few years ago, and just keep your eye on her because she has a very big career going for her, and she comes from a great family. I felt I had never done. I did the pilot episode of this show called Good Trouble on Freeform, like a few months before this. That was my first dip into TV. This is technically my second, but first sort of full season with it, and we had a great team on it. And TV is very different than movies, but allows you to sort of expand what kind of stories you can tell. And so I loved working with this cast.
And right before we get to questions, I saw, this is the best picture I could find of both of you, but I saw an announcement. Was it yesterday or the day before?
Yeah.
That In the Heights is going to be pushed out for a year, and that's going to be a hard decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been dealing with for this expression in this picture is basically our expression this whole week, like just shock and like, are we really going to push this a year? Are we really? And when every time you looked at scenarios, our movie is a big celebration of life, and we want people to be together. We want it to be a big party, and the cast deserves that. This community deserves that. I love streaming, but this is not where the big work for in my head has to be in the theaters, because the theaters force you to leave your home, force you to go in the dark, turn off your phone and focus on a story, and you're paying money, so there's value there. You're giving value to these actors and the story that says it's worth this, and then we put on a show. And I know what we have is very fun and exciting and moving and all those things. And so I think a corporation like AT&T, who owns Warner Brothers, the value of them marketing, spending tens of millions of dollars, maybe $100 million to convince people to go see this movie and see these actors, get these actors on magazine covers and news articles and on talk shows. To me, the value of that is saying to the world that this community, these people are worth your time. And I think that is extremely valuable and has long sort of legs of effects in the future. These actors, if they become famous from this movie, they go be in another movie and they can carry that movie. And it just creates a whole new lane. And so I'm very proud to be a part of that. I'm part of the movement that's happening all around. But being in the theater, as much as it doesn't seem that different from being streaming, it actually is, to me, very different in terms of what we're trying to say and how we're trying to reset things in the world and open up perspectives. And so that was a big push for us of how to do it. And it seemed like next summer gives us a long enough runway to do those things without rushing it.
Okay. All right. I wanna make sure we have time for questions. I know Mr. Levin may have some questions. I know we have some students that have some questions. Just a quick reminder, when we pull you in to ask your question live to Jon, make sure your backgrounds and everything are presentable. All right, Mr. Levin, what do we got? And I'm going to stop the screen share right now so we can go to full screen for everybody.
One of the things I have to let you know, Mr. Bates, is I looked while we were doing this, I don't have the ability to change someone's status from...
You know what? That is my fault. And now I just gave you that power.
Yes, the power. So while I'm looking for the next person, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to pull in will be Skylar. Skylar, get ready. I'm going to pull you in. The question that I have is how much of your job right now has to do, or with your success has to do with the skill of making films versus the skills of like communicating, of building relationships, of guiding decision making, of the more broad skills. Like, so how much of your success is the filmmaking skills at this point in your career, and how much of it are those soft skills that are generally speaking useful for everyone in, you know, in any occupation?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, your skill at your craft is of the utmost importance. That can overcome anything that comes your way. If you focus, if you're a painter and you're the best painter, there's no deniability. They need you and they want you. If you are a singer and you're the best singer, or have a voice that no one else has, then they need you. You're not begging someone for a job. They're coming to you to add to to make the money or to add to their repertoire. So for me, it's like the skills at your craft, no matter what job you're doing, but specifically this one. And by the way, this one has no rules. So making a movie, you take lessons in class, but like, who knows why a movie makes you feel this way or that way. You can take hints from other movies, but usually the best movies are the ones that break those molds and try something totally different and make you feel something very unique. So there is so that is very important. And ultimately, it's like a basketball player where like your skills playing in that championship are ultimately what's going to sort of drive your career forward. However, the ability to practice, the ability to convince people to help you on certain things, the ability to pitch, the ability to be clear on your, to communicate. I mean, I think communication is everything in our lives, and everything gets lost and everything gets connected by communication. So I think your ability to describe what's in your head to someone who does not know what's in your head, whether that's through writing, through words, through images, whatever it is your language is, your strongest language is, to communicate that is extremely powerful, because you know what's in your head is great. And as you start to get it out, if you get it out and you look at it, you're like, oh, that's not that great. And your answer is there. If you get it out and it's still great, it's going to spread. Probably the wrong word to use right now, but it's going to be very contagious to people, and that energy is then is what you need to continue to build. The amount of times I have to pitch my idea to not just people who are going to give me money to do the job, but to each of my crew members, my production designer, costume designer, editor, so that what they're making is in coordination to my vision of the direction we're going with the story. But it's not stuck to some, they're not just painting in numbers. It's like, I want to tell this story, and this, I want to make them feel this, and they can use their skills as a production designer to help me tell that story. That ability is extremely important. I think in a lot of jobs, communication is such an important thing. So the more in touch you are with why you're feeling something, or why you like something or don't like something, the more you can break that down, the more it gives you skill sets to then describe to somebody else, hey, I don't want it to be like this or this, but when I look at this, it makes me feel this way that I want this movie to make you feel. When I listen to this song, it makes me feel what I want this scene to feel like. I don't know what it means to you as a cinematographer that this song, I want it to feel like that, but you can interpret that. And then they use their skill set. So I think that is extremely important, and almost as important in the end as the final product. But, I give long answers.
Oh, that was great. I'm moving it. This is going to be Skylar Chewy. She's going to come in with a question.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I'm going to change my background. My bad.
It's all good. That's fine. I remember that lawn when it was real.
Yeah.
And there were
Okay.
mud puddles in there, but yeah.
What was the most unexpected thing for you about your career?
The most unexpected thing?
Mm-hmm.
The most unexpected is the patience you have to have, and the amount of time you have to give yourself to get there. I think when you come out of high school or college, there is a sense of urgency because your whole life has been on a schedule. by this quarter you get this, by this semester you get this, and then by September of next year you're on another level. And I think real life doesn't work like that. I think real life has its own timeline. And I had to prepare myself mentally for working on something for 3 years of my life. And I think, and you have to, not just mentally, but also financially, you have to think of, okay, I need to survive for 3 years if I'm going to be in this business. So how do I not spend all my money on those sunglasses? Or how do I do jobs that continue on my path, but still allow me to be creative and grow in my craft? I think I had to figure that out along the way, because I thought, I don't know, when you have a certain amount of confidence, you're like, oh, I'll make great stuff and they're going to give me a movie. And I think that is not the case always. However, that journey of survival is the most valuable thing I think you can do as a human being, because that skill set stays with you for the rest of your life, whether you're working or not working. Knowing how to go after what you want and stay afloat and mentally know what's the most important to you keeps you happy. And I just think those things they don't talk about in film school. They don't talk about your mental health and all this stuff. And I just think it's very important as an artist. You don't have to be tortured. So anyway, that's I think the most surprising thing I had to learn.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Guy.
Hey, John.
Right.
Well, we're pulling in the next person to put you on the spot. Do you have a few extra minutes to maybe?
Yeah, of course.
go over?
We'll go however you want. We're good.
I want to be mindful of
I got potty training to do, but
I want to be mindful of the other
Not my
sections we have
coffee.
running today. But we gabbed so long. I want to give folks a chance to ask the questions.
Yeah.
And just before Parisa asks her question, for those of you that are signed up for a 1 o'clock session, there's a couple things going on at 1. Please make sure you're mindful of that. And I'll give you like a 5-minute warning as well.
All right, Parisa.
So what has been your favorite project that you worked on throughout your career, and why?
Come on, you gonna make me do this? No. Everyone is your baby. And so there are things that you learn on each one. It's really hard for me to watch my own movies now, looking back at like even Step Up 2 was on Freeform yesterday. And it was fun to watch it because I hadn't watched it in so long. Now I have a little more perspective, but it hurts my heart because you're never finished. As an artist, you're never finished with your edit. They just take it away from you. And there are things that you always wanted it to be that didn't end up being there. That's a constant. No matter, even Crazy Rich Asians, there's constant things I want to change and try and wish I had more time to do. I think Crazy Rich Asians changed my life as an artist. I think Step Up 2 was my first movie ever, and some of my best friends I met on that movie, and really introduced me to street dancers, and they're some of my favorite people in the world. And so, and then doing the Justin Bieber documentary, that was like a dream, to go travel with the biggest star in the world and go on a bus, and you get to live a rock star's life for a little bit, but also get to like leave it and have that access when he was right in the center of the bullseye. It was really beautiful. I learned a lot from making a documentary. And then In the Heights, I think is probably I can't wait for people to see it, but I do believe it's probably the thing I am most trained to make. All my student films, all my movies have pieces of it in the Heights. And then to work with Lin-Manuel, Miranda, Alex Lacamoire, and that cast was a dream. Like, he's everything you hope he is and more. Most genuine, coolest dude. And at this time when that community needs a voice and America is trying to figure out who we are, I just think it's probably the most timely movie I've ever made as well. And it doesn't harp on that. It's just joy and fun, and I think people are going to really need it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Parisa.
Thanks.
The next person is Magnolia, who has a question related to In Heights.
What's up, Magnolia?
I'm such a big fan. I'm so awestruck, and I could not
thank
be
you.
more excited for In the Heights.
Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, in Crazy Rich Asians, there's this like cultural element about what it means to be an American-born Chinese, and there's also like a Singaporean culture. And then in the Heights, there's like an idea again of what it means to be an immigrant in the U.S. and like a Latino culture. So I was wondering if these cultural elements are part of the reason you were drawn to the projects, and if so, what does culture mean to you?
Great question. You know, going to Pinewood, you know, telling the stories of dumping the dumplings and things like that. Culture was a barrier, but not really. You know, when you get in the Bay Area and Pinewood, it doesn't come up a lot. I never felt like suppressed in some way. And in fact, looking back, I definitely didn't flaunt anything different just because it's high school and junior high and you don't want to any time to feel different. And so I was always actually, probably looking back, more scared to deal with, I didn't want to tell stories about being Chinese. I didn't want to tell stories about my dad's Chinese restaurant because it wasn't, I just wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be like Spielberg and Tim Burton. So I never had that desire, and I probably was a little bit scared because I also didn't have the answers. I didn't have anything to say about it because I was like, yeah, I feel fine at school. And then I feel when I went to Hong Kong or Taiwan for the first time, I remember feeling like, oh, this is different. Everyone looks at you, they treat you differently. And I never understood being treated differently like family when you go into a store. So that was new. And then they call you Guaylo, which is like white devil there too. And then I'm like, oh, but I'm not a part of this either. And so not having that sort of sat in my brain, but I never was like tortured by it. It wasn't until Crazy Rich, it wasn't until after Now You See Me too, where I was like, who am I as an artist? I need to make movies what am I contributing to this medium that I love so much? I've now done, at that point, 7, 8 movies, something like that. Like I can probably get a movie made. So what should I be doing? And Crazy Rich Asians, that I read the book and had so many, a story of Rachel Chu was very close to mine in terms of feeling what it felt like to be Asian American going to Asia for the first time. I just thought it was the perfect vehicle because she was all American. You could not deny that. And as any American, she's your ambassador into sort of Singapore, into this Asian family. And I just thought that was so unique and never had really been done like that before. It was always an Asian person is from China, an Asian person's from this other place, an outsider. And so I loved that idea that she could be the insider for us, for all audiences. And if I could make that audience fall in love with her, if I could make that audience be like, she's all American, then you could not deny that she was on your side, you know? And so, and I didn't have to have the answers in that movie too. I didn't want the answer because there is no answer. Like I didn't want her to say, this is how you be an Asian American. I wanted her to be like, she's gonna stand up for herself against his mother, Eleanor, and his mother, Eleanor, is not gonna give in either. She's gonna say what she feels. So it's both cultural and generational. So I think those two things have become more important in my life because those are the things I never had to assess before. But being now, having the opportunity to tell stories and knowing my responsibilities in this position, I find it more fascinating because now I can explore those things from a different position, I guess. So, and I don't, again, as an artist, you do projects to learn more about yourself, not to like present the results of something. So I find that very fun for me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we have time for about one more question. I want to ask this one from one Kyle Riches.
Oh, Kyle. He loved the Panther back then. Let me tell you, he was the biggest Panther fan of when I was the mascot, just so you guys all know.
So Kyle asks, hey, Jon, I'm just curious about how your schedule looks like when you're filming movies around the States or even the world, when it's in a long time frame, how does it affect your day-to-day life as well as your families? Do they get to go along with you? So that's a good question. Is like you live, you're a person with a family and a life. How does that look in
Yeah.
reference to making films?
Well, I didn't have a wife until 2 years ago. So, no, 2 years ago. So that may say it all a little bit. When you are making, I should probably know that. When you are making a movie, it consumes your life. You have to go to these places. And so every time I was dating somebody and I would move, it would usually end, within a month or two of that. And people didn't understand. When you don't have this job, you don't understand how it can consume your life. But when you find someone who understands that, and you can be respectful on both sides, then I think it can really work. But I learned to be very upfront with people very quickly. And when we went to Singapore, my wife was pregnant, and she couldn't go because of Zika. So I missed 4 months of that pregnancy because she couldn't technically come. And so you have to have someone who's very patient, to be honest. And when we went to New York to shoot in the Heights, she was pregnant again. So we all moved to New York and had a baby and edited. I've been there. I just got back, so I've been there for over a year, and we all moved there. So it's a kind of a bohemian lifestyle, to be honest. It's like joining a circus, and you have new friends and people that you hang out with in new cultures, and then you jump and you go to another place. But that's kind of the best part. I've shot in Malaysia, in Singapore, I've shot in Hong Kong, Macau. I've shot in London. I was in London for a year. I've shot in Baltimore and New York, of course, and so many different places. Only once in LA. So that's you're just a traveling show. It's not easy, but you have to prioritize.
And so you have to be respectful of the people. Jon, I am so grateful that you took this time to share your story with the Pinewood community, especially in this time where we're all living remotely and sheltering in place. And these are the things that bring us together. And I want to just thank you for giving us that time. And I also want to tell everyone that next week we have Dr. Allison Nord, who's an astrophysicist, and
if she gets 250 viewers, I'm going to be pissed.
The challenge has been set. She works with the James Webb Telescope and NASA and Lockheed Martin. She's going to talk to us about her life in what they're finding with the telescope. Jon, it's been a pleasure. You want to say anything last to Mr. Bates?
Yeah, my younger son Quinn just texted me and said, just so you know, Jon, people are telling him that, like Mr. Lemon said in the beginning, multiple people are watching on the same device. So the numbers are a lot.
It's okay. I'm not the president. I'm not all up into the numbers.
But thank you so much for doing this. You're an excellent guy. Your movies are always very visually stunning as well. There was a few questions about that, and people wanted to comment on how wonderful they are. And you're making a big impact, and I'm glad that Pinewood, we were able to make a big impact on you.
Huge impact. I like I said, I wish my kids could be going to Pinewood right now. I'd be resting a lot easier. And I'm really excited for all you seniors who are going off into the world. You guys have such great opportunities ahead of you. You have a great foundation. To me, it was like the idea of courage that Pinewood really gave me, that you could do anything, and it really is true. And not letting go of some of your closest relationships. That is really nice as you get older to know people that knew you when you were young. Mr. Bates and I have become closer than just student and teacher, and Mrs. Bates. So it's really nice to check in because you want to remember who you are right now before the world tears you down. Just kidding. It's fun. The world is fun. Good luck, everybody.
On that inspirational note, have a good day.
Thanks, guys.